Host, your target has engaged in a relationship with another man. Your mission is declared a failure. The system will initiate termination in 10 days. The cold, mechanical voice echoed in his mind. Ethan Shaw's hand tightened around his white cane, a bitter laugh escaping his lips as tears welled in his eyes. Isabella Vance's affinity for him had stalled at 95%. It had been stuck there for 7 years. For 7 years, he'd done everything he could to stay in this world, to stay by her side, racking his brain for any way to push that number just a little higher. But he had failed. Cashing in the points he'd accumulated over those 7 years, he made a request to the system. Restore his sight for 10 days. A moment later, the voice returned. Request approved. Vision restoration initiated. After a long pause, Ethan opened his eyes. The world, once a blur of shapes and sounds, snapped into sharp, unforgiving focus. He made his way upstairs, faking the familiar, fumbling movements of a blind man. He didn't want anyone to know. But as his eyes took in the sprawling penthouse, so full of life, filled with matching sets of his and hers items, a sharp pain lanced through his long, numb heart. He told Isabella so many times, without her love, he would die. And every time, she had sworn, with unwavering conviction, that she would love only him for the rest of her life. In the end, she'd broken her promise. And now he was going to die. Isabella, I'll do it. I'll donate part of my liver to Leo. Ethan knocked on the bedroom door. The moment it opened, his jaw was seized in a powerful grip, and he was pulled into a forceful kiss. Finally decided to agree. Have you? Isabella's voice was a low purr against his lips. But even if you hadn't, I have my ways of getting your liver to save him. Her teeth sank into his collarbone, the sharp pain forcing his eyes open in protest. She was even more beautiful than she'd been years ago, a captivating, bewitching presence. But no amount of glamour could hide the faint, telltale marks on her neck, or the cloying scent of another man's cologne that clung to her skin. It made him sick. Let go. Let go of me. The feeling of suffocation gave him the strength to push her away. I don't feel well tonight. Isabella froze for a second, then let out a laugh that sounded more dangerous than amused. Well, look at you. The blind man's grown a spine. Fine. Then you could just stay right here. He let her drag him across the room. In the dim light, he could see the scattered, purple bruises blooming across her chest. Love bites. There was no question what had happened. Ethan forced himself to look down, fighting back the tears that burned at the corners of his eyes as he watched her retrieve a pair of steel cuffs and lock his wrist to the bedpost. This was her punishment whenever she was in a bad mood. Her way of dealing with him, her blind husband. Suddenly, a second, lighter set of footsteps entered the room. Ethan tensed. Strolling into the master bedroom, as if he owned the place, was his own brother, Leo Shaw. Leo flinched when he saw Ethan, a flash of panic in his eyes. But he quickly remembered Ethan was blind, and a smug grin spread across his face. He climbed directly onto the bed, pulling open the lapels of his silk robe and shooting a suggestive look at Isabella, who had just emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel. In an instant, they were entwined, inseparable. Chained to the bed, Ethan dug his nails into his palm. The warm, yellow lamplight illuminated the scene with brutal clarity. A discarded lace bra, torn fabric scattered on the floor. After a long while, once she was sure Ethan was asleep, Isabella decisively opened a drawer and pulled out a condom. In reality, Ethan had never been more awake. He could hear every muffled groan, every soft whimper. The wet, slick sounds of their mouths meeting filled the bedroom. Gently, Leo. Her whisper was cut off as the man on top of her silenced her with another kiss. Leo glanced over at the figure with the bowed head chained to the bed, his expression triumphant. The sound of flesh slapping against flesh echoed in the room, hot breath ghosting across Isabella's neck. You're so beautiful, Izzy, Leo murmured. I could just eat you up. The sounds grew louder, more frantic. They moved from the bed to the rug, then against the desk, and finally disappeared into the en-suite bathroom. Ethan clamped a hand over his mouth, trying to stifle the sobs that racked his body. His heart felt like it had been carved out of his chest. Memories of their once happy moments flashed through his mind, their wedding vows now a sickening joke. So this was it. The person who had kept his affinity level frozen for 7 years was his own brother. He had been led to his death by the two people he loved most, his wife and his brother. He didn't know how much time had passed before the bedroom lights flared on. Isabella roughly unlocked the cuffs on his wrist. Wake up, get in the bathroom, and run me a bath. A hand gripped his cheek painfully. Ethan opened his eyes, instinctively reaching for the cane beside the bed, but a hard shove sent him tumbling to the floor. Crawl. You want to see Maya tomorrow, you'll crawl. Isabella was a master negotiator. She knew exactly how to control people, especially the husband who had been by her side for 10 years. Her intuition had been sharp. She'd known he was a host, as the system called it, since his second year with her. She knew he had a mission objective tied to her. Once she confirmed his life depended on winning her over, she'd felt even more secure. A man who had donated his corneas to her would surely love her forever. Besides, they had a daughter together. Ethan dug his nails into his palms again. After a moment's hesitation, he got up on his hands and knees, just as he had done so many times before, and began to feel his way across the floor. The sickly sweet smell of sex still hung in the air. He stumbled forward, but he had underestimated her impatience. An arm grabbed him, and he was dragged into the bathroom and thrown onto the cold tile floor. The sting of his skin scraping against the tile shocked him into a sharper state of awareness. A dry towel was thrown at his face. Useless. You're blind, not dead. You can't even run a simple bath without taking forever. Now get over here and wash me. Her nails dug deep into his hand as the shower head above drenched him, making him cough. He said nothing, moving as slowly as he dared. He had tried to prepare himself, but the sight of her body, covered in the marks of another man, was still nauseating. Thankfully, Isabella kept her eyes closed, relaxing, and didn't notice the strange stiffness in the husband who was now acting like her servant. After he was done, she threw him and his cane out of the bedroom. A cold draft swept through the hallway. Ethan wrapped his arms around himself, letting out a shaky breath. He drifted through a haze of nightmares. In one moment, he was back in their bed, hearing her moan Leo's name while making love to him. In the next, he was 5 years old again, a blurry memory of a housekeeper deliberately abandoning him on a busy street, followed by a decade spent in an orphanage. A sharp pain in his stomach jolted him awake. He'd been in this world for 10 years, blind for 9 of them. To wake from a nightmare and be able to see was a shocking, exhilarating relief. Why are you still sleeping? Mom already left for work. Get downstairs and make breakfast for Uncle Leo. Looking at the girl in front of him, a 6/10 replica of Isabella, Ethan felt a surge of irritation. She really was her mother's daughter, sweet and polite to everyone else, but bossy and demanding with him. Maya, I'm your father. Who gave you permission to speak to me like that? The coldness in his tone made the girl freeze, her surprise quickly turning to anger. Her small fists began to beat against his chest, a tantrum of pure fury. You hit me again, Maya Vance Shaw, and see what happens. Hearing her full name spoken twice in a row by her supposedly meek, blind father startled her. The shock gave way to a flicker of fear she couldn't explain. You lazy pig. I'm telling Mom on you. The patter of her footsteps faded down the hall. Ethan gave a wry smile. When he was blind, he had dreamed countless times of seeing his daughter's face. Now that he could, he knew leaving was the right decision. Well, brother. Finally decided to wake up. Leo's voice dripped with mockery. See? Neither Izzy nor little Maya likes you. And soon, you'll be giving me your liver. How pitiful. The taunt was undisguised. In public, Leo played the part of the quiet, shy artist. But with Ethan, his true colors always showed. Ethan connected the smug man before him with the one who had whispered sweet nothings to Isabella last night, and a small, humorless laugh escaped him. He shook his head and started to walk away, but Leo grabbed his wrist. Maya has her piano lesson today. How could you miss it, being her father and all? The whole way, there was a ridiculous spectacle. Ethan, holding his white cane in one hand, being dragged along by the other. Maya's face immediately fell. Uncle Leo, why did you bring him? He's just a blind man from an orphanage. What would he know about music? Leo smiled, ruffling the girl's hair. Of course he doesn't understand. Let me demonstrate. Soon, the elegant notes of Pachelbel's canon, Isabella's favorite piece, filled the room. Hearing it played by the man she now cherished, Ethan had to admit they seemed genuinely in love. A sudden scream shattered the music. Blood bloomed across Leo's pale fingers. Uncle Leo, what's wrong? Maya was the first to see it. 2 thin, white razor blades had been wedged deep between the piano keys, almost impossible to spot against the ivory. Where's the housekeeper? Call Mom now, and get the family doctor. The music room descended into chaos. Ethan, leaning on his cane, tried to leave, but the butler blocked his path. Sir, you can't go. We've reviewed the security footage. You were in this room yesterday. What happened to Mr. Leo may be related to you. You must wait for Ms. Vance to return. It clicked. Yesterday, Leo had asked him to fetch some sheet music from the piano bench. Connecting that to today's incident, Ethan finally understood. He tried to explain the truth, but the butler just repeated the same line, his tone robotic. Even the family security guards looked at him with open contempt. "You're a bad man," Maya hissed, her eyes narrowed. "Uncle Leo's hand is okay, but you just wait. Grandma, Grandpa, and Aunt Chloe are coming." Soon enough, the Shaws stormed in, radiating fury. Helen Shaw, his mother, slapped him across the face without a word. "Was it you? Are you jealous that Leo is living here now? That he's Maya's tutor?" His father, Robert Shaw, stood stiffly, his face a mask of anger. "You were the one who got lost all those years ago. We adopted Leo. If you have a problem, take it up with us. You already forced him to move abroad once. What right do you have to cling to your position as the CEO of Vance Corp's husband?" Ethan cradled his cheek, a bitter smile on his lips. He could see the undisguised disgust and hatred on his parents' faces. He had explained it 1,000 times before. Leo went abroad because he'd fallen for some foreign girl. They had been thrilled when he'd married Isabella, and now they were blaming him. His sister, Chloe, was practically vibrating with rage. "Don't even try to deny it. I'm telling you, Isabella already knows you hurt Leo. You're in for it now." The three Shaws sat in the living room, alternating between cursing Ethan for being a heartless snake and cooing over 6-year-old Maya. "Maya, sweetie, how would you like it if Uncle Leo became your new daddy?" Helen asked tentatively. The answer was immediate. "Yes, I've wanted that for a long time," she thought, but she didn't dare say it out loud. Her mother had warned her that Ethan Shaw was her only father. Not far away, forced to his knees by the security guards, a chilling cold spread through Ethan's body. He thought of all the years he had painstakingly cared for Maya, and a heavy weight settled in his chest. The pain in his knees was sharp, making his eyes burn red. He had rheumatoid arthritis from the hardships of his childhood. The Shaws knew that, yet they still forced him to kneel and repent. "Brother, why are you still kneeling? I already forgive you." Leo walked in and saw the man crumpled in the middle of the room. A wave of triumph washed over him, but his face remained a mask of concern. He affectionately looped his arm through the woman's beside him. "Izzy, it wasn't his fault. Let him get up." Helen saw their intimate posture and smiled with satisfaction. "Isabella, you can't let this go. A blind man from an orphanage. If he has bad character, he needs to be taught a lesson. If you ask me, he should be sent to prison to reflect on what he's done." Chloe added. Isabella rubbed her fingers together, her gaze falling on Ethan. She had been furious when she heard he'd dare to harm Leo. But looking at his unfocused eyes now, a wave of irritation washed over her. "I'll listen to you and Mr. Shaw," she said to his parents. "You can all go home now. We've already found a suitable liver donor. You don't have to worry." Robert and Helen Shaw beamed, praising God for their good fortune. But aside from the three of them, no one else spoke. Would she tell them the liver was Ethan's? Impossible. Besides, giving up a part of your liver wasn't fatal. And with that powerful system of his, giving his liver to Leo was the least he could do. Once the villa was quiet again, Isabella took Leo's hand, examining it carefully. After confirming it was just a surface wound, she delivered Ethan's sentence. "Security. Break his left leg. That should be a sufficient apology to the Shaw family." Ethan looked up, staring at the woman who stood over him like a queen passing judgment, and a hysterical laugh bubbled up inside him. "I didn't do it. Isabella, what right do you have to condemn me?" Her eyes met his. For a split second, as she saw the strange light shimmering in them, a thought crossed her mind. Could his sight be back? But when she stepped closer, she dismissed it as a trick of the light. "Huh, you should thank me. This is getting off easy." Isabella's sneer exploded in his ears like a firecracker. A deep, penetrating cold seeped into his bones. Before him, the man and woman were locked in a passionate kiss. Not far away, he was being held down on the floor. Cold raindrops began to fall, tracing paths across his skin. As the wooden club was raised high, a searing pain shot through his left shin, and a cold sweat broke out on his brow. A pain that pierced his very soul, combined with the image of the tangled bodies in the living room, made his head spin. He had been utterly, completely wrong for the last 10 years. A housekeeper eventually helped him back to his room. Maya pinched her nose as she entered, her eyes widening in shock at the sight of his pale face and his broken, cast-encased leg. "Mom and I both like Uncle Leo. If you just behaved, none of this would have happened. When Uncle Leo got hurt yesterday, Mom dropped a multi-million-dollar contract and rushed back from the city to see him. Sometimes, I really feel sorry for you." Burning with fever, Ethan heard his daughter's words and found them laughable. She spoke of pity, but she had never once been on his side. Ethan didn't know how long he was unconscious. When he woke up, his throat was raw and painful. He was about to reach for some water when a male attendant at the door noticed the movement and began dressing him, just as he always did. If it wasn't for the missus's orders, who'd want to take care of a blind man? When the attendant tried to put him in a wheelchair to go down for dinner, Ethan resisted. But it was Isabella's command, and no one dared to disobey. At the table, Isabella was placing food on Leo's plate with one hand while scrolling through her laptop with the other. Her eyes flickered to the plaster cast on Ethan's leg, and her expression darkened for a moment. Ethan lowered his head and bit into the piece of bread an attendant handed him. As a blind man, he had no right to be picky, and he certainly didn't want to give himself away. "Brother, isn't there anything you like?" Leo said, a false sweetness in his voice. "How about this scrambled egg? It's very soft." The attendant immediately understood and pushed a bowl of eggs in front of Ethan. "No, thank you. I'm allergic to eggs." Before he could finish, the glass next to him was smashed to the floor. "What right do you have to be picky?" Isabella's voice was sharp. "He's just trying to be nice. Eat it. Now." Maya nodded in agreement. "What's wrong with eating eggs? How can you be allergic? Don't waste Uncle Leo's kindness." Ethan looked up, his gaze sweeping over the mother and daughter before quickly lowering his eyes again. He picked up the spoon and started eating. Isabella knew he was allergic to eggs, but she chose to ignore it. After breakfast, Isabella leaned over and kissed Leo without a second thought, feeding him a grape she had just peeled. The attendant glanced at Ethan, who was silently eating, and thought to himself that it was probably better for him not to see. In truth, Ethan saw everything. After what they'd already done, what was a little public affection? "Leo," Isabella said, "as soon as your brother's cold is better, we'll check into the hospital for the transplant surgery. We can't have him passing any germs to you." Ethan pretended not to hear, letting the attendant wheel him upstairs. The moment the door closed, he swallowed an antihistamine pill, fighting down the discomfort as he began to pack. The designer suits and watches in his closet were his to wear, but they didn't belong to him. The same was true for anything from the Shaw family. It seemed the only thing he truly possessed was the title of Isabella Vance's blind husband. His hand brushed against a small, familiar bell and a Barbie doll, and his eyes reddened. They were toys he used to soothe Maya when she was little. She had thrown them out recently, and he had fished them out of the trash. Tucked away in the back of the closet was his Braille journal, a record of his journey of falling in love with Isabella. In 8 years of marriage, all the gifts he'd ever prepared for her were still here, untouched. Without hesitation, he packed them all into a large duffel bag. He would take them to the special education school where he used to teach. Sarah Jenkins, the vice principal, was frowning at the school's financial reports when she looked up and saw Ethan in a wheelchair. She was stunned. "Ethan, Ms. Vance said you had something come up and couldn't teach here anymore." Ethan shook his head with a small smile. Isabella had never supported his desire to teach at a school for the visually impaired. When she found out he was unwilling to donate his liver, she had forcefully submitted his resignation for him. "I injured my leg. I probably won't be able to come for a long time. I just wanted to see the kids today." Sarah nodded, her eyes falling on the duffel bag. She noticed a collection of exquisite gifts inside, including several expensive watches and ties. "Ethan, these must be very valuable. The children can't use them. I know the school is struggling. You can sell these at a pawn shop. Think of it as a gift from me to the kids. You know I don't have much cash on hand." The woman's eyes welled with tears. She knew bits and pieces of Ethan's story. He was a kind soul who had suffered a great deal. "Thank you, Ethan. I'll keep a record of how much they're worth. Come on, let's go see the children." For the rest of the day, Ethan was surrounded by the kids. It had been too long since he'd seen their bright, smiling faces. He taught one last class, his fingers expertly gliding over the Braille textbook as he listened to their unified voices reading aloud. A warmth spread through his chest. In his final days, being able to see their faces made it all worthwhile. Because it was hard to get a cab at night, Sarah insisted on driving Ethan home. As they pulled away, they passed Isabella's car, speeding in the opposite direction. The car was moving so fast that even Leo, in the passenger seat, felt sick. "Izzy, slow down." The driver said he just dropped my brother off at the school with a duffel bag. Isabella's racing heart slowed a little. The thought of him, blind and in a wheelchair, still determined to travel so far, was infuriating. When a housekeeper told her he had packed up all the gifts she'd ever given him and taken them to this rundown school, a fire had ignited within her. Ethan was really getting bold. He thought that because he was donating his liver, he could do whatever he wanted. The security guard at the school gate saw the unfamiliar license plate and immediately stopped the car. When he learned they were looking for Ethan, his expression turned complicated. "Our vice principal already drove him home. It's late and he can't see." Furious at the wasted trip, Isabella slammed her fist on the steering wheel, her anger growing when she found out the vice principal was a young woman. Leo saw the look on her face and understood immediately, a flicker of resentment in his eyes. Izzy, slow down. If my brother made you angry, let me make it up to you, okay? During the few seconds they were stopped at a red light, Leo leaned over and kissed her appeasingly, his fingers sliding under her skirt. Ethan, already home, knew nothing of this. He was woken up by Maya. Mom's not back yet. And you're sleeping? Uncle Leo called. He said to go to Mom's room and get something for him. Hurry up. Ethan was wheeled into the bedroom. He was shocked when he saw what Leo wanted. A child wouldn't know what it was, but he knew perfectly well. Thinking of Isabella, out late at night, it was obvious who the condoms were for. His face tightened. He had an attendant wheel him down to the underground garage. From a few feet away, he could hear a woman's distinct moans. Leo, I brought what you asked for. Isabella froze. Through the car window, she saw the man in his pajamas. She started to cover herself, but Leo stopped her. It's okay, Izzy. He can't see. Thanks, brother. Do you even know what's in that box you're holding? Leo asked, his voice smug. Ethan shook his head calmly, his gaze sweeping over the reclined car seat and the two half-dressed bodies. He clenched his fist. How could a blind man like me know? Since I've delivered it, I'll be going now. As Ethan left, Leo smirked and tore open the packaging. His eyes fell on the wedding ring on Isabella's finger as he pressed his hot body against hers. Izzy, let's try something new. How about we put the ring inside tonight? The woman's breath hitched. Her grip on him tightened, making the man, lost in pleasure, stumble. Hidden around the corner of the stairwell, Ethan watched the car rock back and forth. He wiped a tear from his eye, suppressing the storm of emotions raging within him. It was okay. Soon, he would be leaving this all behind. Isabella returned to an empty room and immediately knew her usually docile husband was angry. She pinched his nose, watching a faint blush spread across his handsome face. Overcome with an impulse, she leaned down and bit his Adam's apple. Ethan woke up in pain. It had to be Isabella. Let go. I need to rest. The coldness in his voice irritated her. She twisted his arm behind his back, pinning his shoulder down. Who gave you the nerve to pack up your things? You like those disabled kids that much? And that person who drove you home today, didn't I tell you not to have contact with the opposite sex? Did my words go in one ear and out the other? Those children are deserving of compassion. And someone drove me home because it was late. Isabella, you're being too controlling. A harsh laugh escaped her lips as she released him. We'll see how I deal with you after you donate your liver. Don't forget, I'm your mission objective. Pleasing me and obeying me is your job. Besides, she continued, her voice dripping with scorn, look at how your own family treats you. I was the one who was kind enough to support you. Isn't being the son-in-law of the Vance family good enough for a blind man like you? Why do you insist on making a spectacle of yourself and embarrassing me? Ethan was completely stunned. Fueled by alcohol, she was finally speaking her mind. So she had known about the system all along, and she had, without hesitation, chosen to send him to his death. He even began to suspect that the 95% affinity was a lie. A hot tear slid down his cheek and fell onto the back of her hand. So fragile, she thought. She stroked his hair, resorting to her usual threat. Don't worry, the title of my husband is still yours. I have no plans to replace you. For now. Ethan found it hilarious. He didn't need it, and he didn't want it anymore. Just then, a frantic knock came at the door. Ms. Vance, Maya is vomiting uncontrollably. Could it be food poisoning? Isabella immediately sat up and threw on a robe. Where's she? Get the family doctor here now, and get the car ready for the hospital. Ethan saw Maya lying unconscious, and a pang of pain shot through him. When he looked up, his eyes met Leo's. The man was in his pajamas, a fresh love bite clearly visible on his neck. He shot Ethan a hateful glare before rushing forward to scoop Maya into his arms. Brother, you're not mobile. I'll go. I can do it. Maya, she's... No, you'll just be in the way at the hospital. Leo, let's go. Isabella didn't even give him a chance to refuse before striding out of the room. The pitying looks from the housekeepers fell on Ethan. For a moment, he felt completely lost. The next morning, Ethan received a call from Sarah Jenkins. Ethan, I had someone appraise those items. They're worth about $500,000. On behalf of the school and the children, thank you. We're having a performance on the 5th of next month. You should come and watch. Ethan nodded. That was the day before his surgery. He would have time. After some hesitation, he firmly instructed his driver to take him to the hospital. As he approached the room, he heard Maya's voice. Mom, I'm fine. Last night, I only ate the mushrooms from the kitchen. Dad said they were delicious and made me try them. Is that so? Leo's voice was laced with false concern. Why would brother do that? Could he have made her sick on purpose, so you would stay with him, Izzy? Outside the door, Ethan bit his lip so hard he tasted blood. He looked at the pale child in the hospital bed. He had never done such a thing. His own daughter was framing him. He glanced at Leo's triumphant expression and understood. That's not true. I would never hurt Maya. Even a tiger won't eat its own cub. What evidence do you have that I did this? Isabella looked at Ethan in his wheelchair, her expression impatient. Still making excuses? She's sick, and as her father, you're responsible. Besides, why would child lie? Go home and kneel. You can eat when you're ready to admit you were wrong. With just a few words, his sentence was passed. Looking at Maya's calm face, he regretted the worry he had felt last night. A daughter who would frame her own father to please another man was a daughter not worth having. Under the watchful eye of a security guard, he was forced to kneel. The fractured bone in his left leg throbbed with excruciating pain. Ethan knelt until nightfall, until he heard familiar voices. Uncle, this suit looks so handsome on you. Mom has great taste. From the murmurs of the staff, Ethan learned it was a classic, custom-made suit from a recent auction, worth an 8-figure sum. It had been given to Leo. You're so sweet, Maya. You really know what to say. The two of them were as affectionate as a real father and daughter, oblivious to the world. After they left, Ethan found out from a housekeeper that there had been a parent-child event at the elementary school that afternoon. Maya had insisted that Leo attend as her father, and Isabella had agreed, keeping it a secret from Ethan. He stiffly raised his head and looked around the cold, empty house. No one cared about him. There was no reason for him to stay. After a long while, the click of high heels grew closer. Isabella looked at the man on the floor, still refusing to admit his guilt, and a wave of irritation washed over her. She lifted his chin, forcing their eyes to meet. Ethan could see perfectly, but he didn't dare blink. Is it so hard to just say you're sorry? Ethan, I never realized you were this stubborn. A bitter smile twisted the man's lips as he defiantly turned his head away. I regret it. I never should have donated my corneas to you. A tear slid down his face, and for a moment, it struck a chord in Isabella's heart. But then she remembered his defiance and clenched her jaw. How dare he? How dare this man who was supposed to love her unconditionally say something like that? For all these years, she had allowed him, a blind man, to marry into the Vance family. Wasn't that enough? Her grip loosened, and she turned and walked away, her face a cold mask. He didn't know how much time had passed. Ethan woke up, chilled to the bone. He opened his eyes to a pitch-black living room, the only light coming from his phone screen, which showed more than a dozen missed calls. As he unlocked it, a news alert popped up. The screen reader, still set to blind mode, automatically read the headline aloud. Renowned disabled advocate Ethan Shaw releases charity single. But is the truth a blatant act of plagiarism against his musically gifted younger brother, Leo Shaw? The next second, his phone rang again. It was Ben. Ethan, was your sheet music and lyrics leaked? A few days ago, that music company your brother is with released this new song. The investor was Vance Corp. Now everyone online is saying you're a plagiarist. The last thread of his composure snapped. All his compositions were in his bedroom. Could Leo have stolen them himself? But Isabella, as the CEO of Vance Corp, knew that song was a charity single he wrote for disabled children. As the most likely explanation settled in his mind, Ethan stared at the hundreds of thousands of hateful comments online, his eyes burning. He sat there all night. By morning, his eyes were bloodshot. The sight of him startled Isabella as she came downstairs. That charity song, did you have something to do with it? A flicker of guilt crossed Isabella's face, but she answered with brazen confidence. I did. Leo liked the song, so I gave him all the drafts of your music and lyrics from your room. The blunt admission felt like a punch to the gut. A metallic taste filled Ethan's mouth. Why? Do you have any idea how long that took me? It took me over a year to compose it in Braille. He's a master of music. He can write any song he wants. His hysterical shout made Isabella pause. It was the first time she had ever seen him so angry. So what, Ethan? It's just a song. If you want to release music, I can get you a professional team. Leo isn't well right now. Why are you making such a big deal over something so small? Ethan dug his nails into his palms and handed his phone to a housekeeper. Help me post a statement clarifying this. The next second, the phone was snatched from the housekeeper's hand and thrown to the floor, shattering into pieces. Ethan, what do you think you're doing? Don't you know that posting a statement will hurt Leo? He's already sick. Can't you bear to see him have anything good? The man froze, completely at a loss. This was Isabella's doing. Even if he posted a clarification, no one would believe him. Soon, the Shaw family arrived. Robert Shaw was the first through the door. He grabbed Ethan and threw him to the ground. Helen Shaw frowned in disgust, spitting curses at him. "We should have sent you to prison the last time you hurt Leo. You jinx. Why couldn't you have just stayed in that orphanage forever? Why did you have to come back? And now you dare to plagiarize Leo's song?" The endless stream of accusations was a deafening roar in his ears. Tears were already streaming down Ethan's face. Leo clung to Isabella's hands, his voice choked with feigned sadness. "Brother, I just really like the song. It's my fault. You can let those people online curse me. I'm not afraid." After he had cried his fill, Leo went to help the slumped Ethan to his feet. Leaning in close, he whispered in a voice only the two of them could hear, digging his fingers into Ethan's arm. "This isn't nearly enough." Suddenly, Leo's body swayed. He lost his balance, and his head slammed hard against the corner of a table. From Isabella's perspective, it looked as if Ethan had deliberately pushed him. Within moments, blood was trickling from Leo's forehead. Everyone in the room gasped. "Mr. Shaw is bleeding. Someone call a doctor," a maid screamed. The living room erupted into chaos. Amid the pandemonium, no one paid any attention to Ethan, who was propped against the sofa. The moment he heard the maid's shouts, he knew what Leo's plan was, to make everyone think he had pushed him, ensuring he would be punished. The villa fell silent. The first person to lash out at him was Maya. For a 6-year-old, she was surprisingly strong. She grabbed the front of his shirt and started wailing. "It's all your fault. Why did you push Uncle Leo? How could I have such a horrible father like you? I wish Uncle Leo was my dad. If you like him so much, then go ahead, make him your father. As for me, I'll act as if I never had you as a daughter." Ethan struggled to his feet, but was shoved hard by Isabella. "Ethan, you're telling your own daughter to call another man dad? Have you lost your mind? Who gave you the nerve to push Leo? Which hand did you use? Or was it both?" A dark part of Ethan was almost glad he could see. Otherwise, he would have missed the uncanny resemblance in the mother and daughter's accusatory expressions. "I didn't push him. And yes, I'm disowning Maya as my daughter. You dare. Get to the hospital and apologize. If it weren't for the fact that you're about to give Leo your liver, I'd strangle you myself." His right hand was seized in a crushing grip. A sickening crack echoed in the room as the bones in his wrist fractured. His hand went limp, and just lifting it was an agony. The entire way to the hospital, Ethan was dragged along in his wheelchair, his left leg still in a cast. The moment Chloe saw the culprit, she was overcome with fury. She kicked his wheelchair, sending him sprawling to the floor, unable to move. She was about to kick him again when Isabella stopped her. "That's enough. I've already broken the hand he pushed Leo with." Robert and Helen Shaw suppressed their anger, rushing to comfort the now-awake Leo. "Leo, are you feeling better? Is there anything you want to eat? We'll do the transplant surgery in a few days." Robert looked over at Isabella. "Where's the person donating the liver to Leo? Tell him to get ready. We need to make sure Leo gets the healthiest liver possible." A flicker of discomfort crossed Isabella's face before she nodded. Donating part of a liver wasn't fatal. Even if the Shaws found out, they wouldn't care. "Where's my brother? Is he okay?" Leo asked weakly. "Don't blame him." He forced a smile, though inside he was ecstatic. Helen looked at her kind, understanding son, her heart swelling with pride. "Leo, you're just too good. From the day he came back to the family at 18, how many times has he bullied you, openly and secretly? And then he even stole Isabella from you. When Ethan had first been found and brought back, she had considered trying to make it up to him. But his country bumpkin ways and his constant pranks and schemes against Leo had quickly soured her opinion. Then, he had used the fact that he'd donated his corneas to save Isabella, who had been blinded in a car crash, to become the son-in-law of the Vance family, a position that should have belonged to her Leo. Outside the room, Ethan knelt numbly. Passing patients and nurses pointed and whispered. He wanted to explain, but Isabella wouldn't allow it. Don't let any doctor treat his right hand. Make him kowtow and apologize to Leo. For an entire day, Ethan was forced by security guards to bow his head to the floor. By the end, his forehead was bloody, and he had lost consciousness. When he woke up, he learned that he had nearly died from cardiac arrest. One of the guards watching him had noticed something was wrong. Lying in the hospital bed, Ethan stared blankly ahead, his right hand still throbbing with pain. Only Maya came to see him, sneaking into the room with a delighted expression on her face. "Did you know? Mom's pregnant. Uncle Leo is so happy. I'm going to have a little brother or sister soon." Ethan turned his head mechanically. The last thread holding him together finally snapped. After a long moment, a bitter smile crossed his face. He pulled the wedding ring from his finger and threw it into the trash can. At 9 o'clock that night, Isabella arrived, a chill in the air clinging to her. She had spent the day with Leo, getting him checked out. Thankfully, his injury wasn't serious. The entire Shaw family, herself included, had hovered around his bed. She had only heard that Ethan had almost died when a doctor sent someone to inform her. The surgery is scheduled for the day after tomorrow in the afternoon. You can't eat anything beforehand. After the surgery, everything you've done to Leo will be forgiven. Ethan let out a low laugh, his eyes fixed on her flat stomach. The room fell silent. Isabella finally noticed his limp, dangling right hand. A flicker of unease crossed her face. Is there anything you want to say to me? Isabella's face paled. Did he know she was pregnant? But then she dismissed the thought. He was blind. Who would be foolish enough to tell him? No, just get ready. After you donate the liver, I have a gift for you. It was the first time in a long while that Isabella's tone had softened. But the man in the bed just lowered his head, a deep sadness in his eyes. The next day, Ethan kept his appointment. Ben looked at his friend with concern. Ethan, did the Vance family give you a hard time about the song Starlight? They're all just a bunch of hyenas. The man shook his head, his voice calm. It doesn't matter anymore. But you don't get angry at the people insulting me online. It's not worth it. When they arrived at the school's makeshift stage, a large crowd had already gathered. Seeing the lively scene and the vibrant, energetic children, Ethan's eyes reddened. A genuine smile finally broke through. Isabella, who had only intended to make a brief appearance at the event, felt a surge of irritation when she saw Ethan smile. It was an eyesore. He dares to come all this way in a wheelchair, right before his surgery, just for this stupid event. She pushed her way through the crowd and grabbed his arm. You're coming with me. This is no place for a blind man. What if you have another cardiac arrest? Ethan shook her hand off. She wasn't worried about him dying. She was worried there would be no one to give their liver to Leo. No, I'm staying until it's over. Ethan instinctively looked for Ben, but Isabella had a death grip on his wheelchair. It doesn't matter what you want. Ethan, when are you going to stop being so willful? Ben tried to follow, but he was swamped by reporters and couldn't get away. The car sped away. Ethan cautiously leaned against the window. The sudden ringing of a phone shattered the silence. Ethan, you need to get to City Hospital now. A boy named Daniel Chen fell off the stage. He's bleeding badly. I remember you both have a rare blood type. Can you come and donate blood? Panic seized Ethan. He knew Daniel. The boy had been his class monitor. He came from a poor family and, being mute, had been bullied relentlessly. Isabella, take me to City Hospital. I have to save him. Ethan grabbed her arm, his eyes shot with red. Logic told Isabella she couldn't agree. If Ethan donated blood, the liver transplant would have to be postponed. Before she could decide, her assistant handed her a ringing phone. It was Chloe Shaw, screaming into the receiver. Isabella, where's the liver? Leo is an acute liver failure. He needs the surgery now. Ethan's heart turned to ice, but he hadn't given up. Please, I'm begging you. That kid, Daniel, he's not strong. It's hard to find a match for his blood type from the blood bank. He's so young. Isabella pried his fingers from her arm, avoiding his pleading gaze. For all I know, this is just an excuse to get out of donating your liver. Behave, Ethan. Driver, speed up. Those few words sealed a child's fate. In the end, Ethan was gagged and dragged onto the operating table. From outside the operating room, he could hear the voices of Isabella and the Shaw family. As long as you cut less than 60% of the liver, he won't die, right? Yes, ma'am. You can rest assured. Ethan couldn't make a sound. Tears streamed down his face as the anesthesia flooded his system. The joy of his impending departure mingled with a terrifying, unknown fear. His body began to tremble. Host, due to the removal of 80% of the liver, organ failure is in progress. As the voice faded, a white light filled his vision. The world became a chaotic, blurry mess, and then nothing. Ding. Termination successful. Moments later, the heart monitor in the silent operating room shrieked in alarm. A young nurse, tasked with staunching the bleeding, frowned. Doctor, don't suture yet. The patient, he's quiet. The surgeon glanced at Leo, who was intubated on the adjacent table, and shook his head. After the surgery, will the transplant recipient out first? Just say he's in the ICU. We'll come up with a reason why the other one didn't make it. His tone was so cold, it was as if he were talking about an object, not a person. The young nurse started to protest, but was held back by another assistant. This hospital had been specially built by Isabella for Leo's surgery. According to Leo, anyone who disobeyed him would be blacklisted from the entire industry. They didn't dare take that risk. But they hadn't expected the donor to be in such poor health. The reality of the situation left no room for hesitation. The surgeon let out a heavy sigh and decided to consult with Leo before making a final decision. Ms. Vance, Mr. Shaw's liver transplant was a success. Hearing this, the Shaw family let out a collective sigh of relief. Chloe protectively hovered over Leo, who was still groggy from the anesthesia, and accompanied him to his room. Isabella started to follow, but a thought of Ethan gave her a strange sense of unease. How is Ethan Shaw, the donor? The doctor met her searching gaze, a flicker of shock in his eyes. He thought she didn't care about her blind husband, but he didn't dare tell her the truth and face her wrath. He composed himself and said, "He's currently in the intensive care unit. His condition is stable post-surgery." The weight on Isabella's chest lifted. She remembered his annoying tears as she sent him into surgery and decided against visiting him. Good. Focus on Leo. He just got out of surgery. Pay close attention to any complications. You know the consequences if you don't. Her voice was calm, but it carried the unmistakable authority of someone in power. Izzy, come quick. Leo's awake. Isabella hurried away. The doctor wiped the sweat from his brow, feeling as though he'd overthought things. He gave his assistant a look, and soon, a body covered by a white sheet was wheeled out. Leo was in pain after the surgery and wasn't in a good mood, but seeing the crowd of Shaws and Isabella gathered around him, he immediately put on a smile. Izzy, you're here. I feel so much better after the transplant. Thank you for finding a donor for me. His words were sweet, but Isabella's mind was uncharacteristically elsewhere. By the way, Izzy, the donor you found, it was a living donor, right? I just heard a nurse say they took quite a lot. Helen Shaw voiced the question that had been nagging at her. Before Isabella could answer, Robert Shaw waved his hand dismissively. Why are you worrying about that? You know what Izzy is capable of. By the way, where's that blind man, Ethan? His brother is having surgery, and where is he? At the mention of Ethan's name, Chloe's eyes flashed with annoyance. She had never been able to stand her blind brother. Don't talk about him, he's such a buzzkill. I remember we found out a long time ago that his liver was a match for Leo's. If he hadn't been so unwilling, Leo wouldn't have had to wait this long. And that time he hurt Leo, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. Robert and Helen nodded in agreement, as if Ethan wasn't their son at all. A pang of guilt pricked at Isabella, and she considered telling them the truth. But the next moment, Maya burst into the room. Uncle Leo, I missed you so much. I already told that blind man that Mommy's pregnant. He already agreed to let me be your little girl. Uncle Leo, when can you be my daddy? A dead silence fell over the room. Isabella was the first to break it, her voice tight with embarrassment. She never thought her foolish daughter would blurt that out in front of everyone. Helen, however, didn't see anything wrong with it. It was how things should be. Robert, too, simply smiled, tacitly approving of the child's words. Helen patted her granddaughter's head, satisfied, her resentment towards Ethan softening slightly. Maya, once Uncle Leo is out of the hospital, maybe we can have a wedding. Enough. Isabella couldn't control her anger any longer, her sharp voice cutting through the chatter. They were planning her life, right here, dictating her marriage. Ethan was still unconscious, yet his own family was already plotting to take away the little he had. She remembered what he'd said the night before the surgery, and it all made sense now. But Isabella wasn't afraid. She could just lie about how far along she was. If she was careful and sweet-talked him, he would probably believe her. Maya out. Leo, you should get some rest. Her tone left everyone feeling awkward, especially the hot-tempered Chloe. Isabella, you and Leo were childhood sweethearts. If you ask me, you two should have gotten married a long time ago. The woman's face darkened completely. The past was something she wanted to forget. When she'd been blinded in the car accident, she never would have imagined that the person willing to donate his corneas would be Ethan. Though she had been indifferent at first, he had been docile enough over the years, and she had no reason to abandon a blind man. In the hospital bed, Leo's heart clenched at the mention of the past. It was true. He had taken off with a rich girl and used the excuse of studying abroad because he didn't want to donate his corneas. When his ex-wife went bankrupt, he had no choice but to hide that part of his history and rush back home. And now Chloe was bringing it all up. The man dug his nails into his palms, forcing a gentle smile. All right, Chloe, I need a rest. The past is in the past. Maya, go on out with your mom. Maya pouted, looking to Leo for help, but hearing his words, her eyes filled with tears. Isabella saw her daughter's expression and understood. She strode over and picked Maya up. I have things to do at the office. I'll come see you later, Leo. The car was filled with a heavy, oppressive silence. Isabella's voice was laced with anger. I have told you so many times, your father is Ethan Shaw. Maya, Why won't you listen to me? The girl hung her head. Meeting her mother's stern gaze, she started to feel scared. But Dad doesn't want me anymore. The maids all say Uncle Leo is going to be my new dad, and the blind man is okay with it. I told him you were pregnant, and he didn't even react. Isabella remembered Ethan's angry outburst a few days ago. She had thought he was just letting off steam, but now everyone was taking it seriously. Did he really mean it? Did he not even care about the child she was carrying? The thought terrified her. He was probably still lying in a hospital room. After scolding her daughter, Isabella made a decision. She would find some time tonight to go see him, as a reward. Meanwhile, after the Shaw family had left, Leo was casually scrolling through his phone by the bed when the doctor quietly opened the door. Mr. Shaw, Ethan Shaw. He died on the operating table. Right now, only a few people from the surgical team know. The body is in the morgue. When Ms. Vance asked about his condition after the surgery, I saw the look on her face and didn't dare tell her the truth. Leo's mind was reeling. His eyes widened as the implications sank in. He nodded repeatedly. You did the right thing. Just say he died of sudden cardiac arrest post-op. If she finds out the real reason, it could get messy. The two of them conferred, finally deciding that today would be the day Ethan Shaw officially died of sudden cardiac arrest. That evening, Isabella was in her office trying to work when an inexplicable restlessness took hold of her. Her assistant knocked on the door, asking timidly, Ms. Vance, one order the patient meal from that private kitchen, correct? Isabella shook her head. Make it two, and for one of them, add some extra foods that are good for the liver. The assistant quickly hid his surprise. He knew, of course, that the donor was Ms. Vance's husband, and that he hadn't been willing. How could a single meal make up for the pain of being forced onto an operating table? After a long while, the woman stood up and grabbed her coat. Her phone suddenly rang. She realized she'd had it on silent. There were over a dozen missed calls from the hospital. A sense of dread spread through her chest. She shakily dialed the number back. Ms. Vance, Mr. Ethan Shaw. He just passed away. We were unable to resuscitate him. Please come quickly. The world seemed to shatter around her. When she came to her senses, she was stumbling out of the Vance Corp tower and speeding away in her car. The whole way there, she kept repeating a mantra to herself. It's not possible. Removing 60% of the liver isn't fatal. And he has that system thing. He can't die before the mission is complete. Could this be a trick he cooked up with the doctors? Was he angry that she didn't come to see him immediately after the surgery? As she considered this possibility, her panic subsided slightly. She slowed the car and called her assistant, who had just arrived at the hospital. Go to my husband's room and leave the food. Then report his condition back to me. The assistant was confused but did as he was told. The nurses and doctors, however, seemed to avoid the name Ethan Shaw like the plague. It wasn't until he cornered one of the doctors that he learned the truth. An hour ago, Mr. Shaw had passed away after a failed resuscitation attempt. His body was in the morgue. Ms. Vance, he's in the morgue. You need to come now. Sitting in her car, Isabella's hand went limp, dropping the phone. Panic seized her. By the time she pulled up to the hospital, she could already see the anxious-looking doctor and her assistant waiting by the morgue entrance. Ms. Vance, we truly did everything we could. Mr. Shaw was weaker than we anticipated, and he suffered a sudden organ failure. Please accept our condolences. The assistant heard the explanation and didn't doubt it for a second. He sighed. That was the way with surgery. Even if it was successful, unexpected complications could always arise. The woman's eyes were tinged with red. The cold air of the morgue bit at her exposed skin, making her shiver, but she reached out and pulled back a corner of the white sheet. In an instant, she collapsed to the floor. She wouldn't be mistaken. That was Ethan's face, lifeless and pale. Just a day ago, he had been fine. Was it because of the transplant? She grabbed the doctor's collar, her eyes wild. Didn't you guarantee me that taking 60% wouldn't be fatal? Well, what is this? The doctor looked troubled, his expression shifting to one of sorrow as he recited the lines he had prepared. We followed your instructions exactly. But Mr. Shaw had recently suffered a fracture, and this wasn't his first cardiac event. Most importantly, he had lost the will to live. It had little to do with the surgery itself. An image of the frail, blind man in a wheelchair, his face etched with sorrow, flashed through Isabella's mind. And now, he was gone forever. After dismissing everyone, she couldn't help but take Ethan's cold hand, trying to warm it with her own, but it was no use. A hysterical thought surfaced. How could she have thought this was some kind of ploy? He had that system. How could he just die? Ethan, come out. Are you hiding? Using that system of yours? Is that it? Are you mad at me for using your liver to save someone? The vast, Empty Morgue offered no reply, seeming to mock her delusion. She didn't know how much time had passed before Maya pushed open the door. Mommy, why are you still in here? The assistant said you've been here for a long time. Let's go get something to eat. And that blind daddy of mine, he didn't even come to see me after giving his liver to Uncle Leo. You'd better have a talk with him later. Maya complained, completely oblivious to the dark look in her mother's eyes. Who told you your father was donating his liver? Tell me. Maya flinched at her mother's shout, her face crumpling in distress. Uncle Leo. He said Daddy would definitely donate his liver. The woman's expression froze. She had told Leo they had found a donor, but she had never said it was Ethan. The thought that Leo might be connected to Ethan's death made her heart clench. No, she was probably overthinking it. Even if Leo had found out by accident, he was too kind to ever harm anyone. Isabella forced herself to calm down. As she stood up, Maya tugged at her pants. Mommy, why do the fingers sticking out from under there look so much like Daddy's? Where's Daddy? The woman fought back the stinging in her eyes. Suddenly, she didn't want to hide it anymore. That is your father. He's dead. She didn't know who she was saying it for. But in that room, the mother and daughter both knew Ethan Shaw was gone. Helen Shaw had seen her granddaughter go into the morgue with the assistant. Overcome with curiosity, she had followed, pushing the door open just in time to hear Isabella's last words. The person who donated the liver was dead. She hid her shock, her eyes darting to the body covered by the white sheet. Her fists clenched. Accidents happen in surgery. Since he's dead, Izzy, you should give him a proper burial. And remember to give his family generous compensation. After all, he saved Leo. By the way, she added, have you seen that ungrateful Ethan? I heard he would rather go in his wheelchair to see some disabled children's performance than come to the hospital to see Leo. He's so heartless. Helen. Isabella's voice was strained, but Maya beat her to it, her face pale. Daddy's dead. He died after giving his liver to Uncle Leo. The girl's small voice was choked with tears. My blind daddy. He's dead. Helen's face went white. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. How could that be? Izzy, didn't you find a donor? How could it be him? Isabella lowered her head, her voice laced with grief. Leo's condition was critical. He was the only option. According to my plan, he wasn't supposed to die. I don't know why this happened. By the end, the woman looked utterly defeated. She had calculated everything, except for this unexpected post-op complication. But would he really die like this? Just leave her completely? For the first time in her life, Isabella was racked with doubt and confusion. She touched the corner of her eye. These were Ethan's eyes. And now, their owner was gone. Helen wanted to pull back the sheet, but her hand was shaking too much. When she finally saw the face so similar to her own, she broke down, sobbing. This was her biological son, truly dead, and because of her other son. Guilt washed over her like a tidal wave. Why didn't you tell us? Wasn't there any other way? Helen staggered to her feet, screaming at her, but Isabella's mocking reply stung her eyes. If you had known, you probably would have allowed it too. It's just donating a liver. It's not fatal. But he just had to go and die, didn't he? Isabella's nose stung, and her voice broke. The lights of the Vance estate burned as brightly as ever, but a chilling frost had settled over Isabella's heart. Her daughter, who had cried herself to sleep, was limp in her arms. Every corner of the house, the front steps, the grand foyer, was haunted by Ethan's presence, but always in scenes of his punishment. What must it have felt like for him, lying on that cold operating table? He couldn't see, only feel the endless pain, and then slip away into unconsciousness. The horrible irony was that she, his wife, had indirectly killed him. A maid timidly approached her. Ms. Vance, dinner is ready. For dessert, we have the pear soup that Mr. Shaw used to ask for. He said Maya always gets a cough in the fall. Isabella stopped in her tracks. At that moment, Maya woke up. She looked around, then began to struggle and wail. Where's Daddy? I want Daddy. I don't like your pear soup. I'm not drinking it. The maid looked distressed, but when she tried to comfort the girl, she was pushed away. That's enough. What are you crying for? Daddy will come back. Now be good and eat your dinner. Maya met her mother's confident gaze and had no choice but to believe her. Without realizing it, the woman had wandered into Ethan's room. They had slept in separate rooms ever since their daughter was born, a suggestion she had made. Ethan hadn't objected. He wouldn't have dared. He had always been good-tempered, and after he went blind, he became even more docile. But whenever Leo was involved, he would become emotional. From tutoring to being framed for harming him, he had tried his best to play the part of the CEO's husband for 10 years. But sometimes, Isabella wondered, if he ever completed his mission, would he leave? She couldn't allow that to happen. So whenever he seemed to pull away, She would offer him a small bit of sweetness, just enough to make him think he could still succeed. The room was decorated to his liking, but the pristine bed reminded her of the tears in his eyes that day. It seemed that after he agreed to the donation, he had become prone to crying, even saying such cruel things. So, was it so strange that he would leave? In a matter of minutes, Isabella's thoughts were in turmoil. When she saw the empty closet and the Braille journal, she froze. She didn't know Braille and had never needed to learn it, but tonight she had a desperate urge to know what was inside. She looked up the characters one by one. Eventually, frustrated by the slow pace, she hired a specialist to read the entire thing to her over the phone. Ethan had divided the 10 years into 3 parts: before the marriage, after the marriage, and after Leo's return. The entries chronicled his journey from hopeful optimism about his mission to despair and numbness. Suddenly, the translator's voice faltered, tinged with uncertainty. "Ms. Vance, your husband's last entry. It says his vision was restored. Is that true?" The world went blank. Isabella's hand clenched into a fist. "When?" "About 10 days ago. He wrote that he was very happy and grateful." The color drained from Isabella's face. 10 days ago, that was the day he had agreed to donate his liver. That meant he had seen everything she and Leo had done. She had thought, since he was blind, that if they were quiet, he would never find out. But reality had just slapped her in the face. And that time in the parking garage, he had acted so nonchalant, as if nothing was wrong, even handing them condoms. She had been on edge then, terrified he would realize something. But he had been so normal, with none of the hysterical rage she might have expected. After a long while, Isabella sank to the floor, her thoughts finally clear. The husband she had been married to for 10 years no longer loved her, even if she was his mission objective, even if they had a child. He had chosen the most final way to leave, a punishment for his wife's infidelity and his daughter's contempt. Perhaps Isabella had once loved Leo, but now it was more about the thrill, the excitement. She had even considered divorce. Outside, a storm raged, the wind and rain lashing against the windows. Isabella, who had always prided herself on her success and control, felt, for the first time, like a fool. She had lost the one person whose world had once revolved around her, and her heart ached with a pain like being flayed alive. After a long time, she placed a hand on her flat stomach, and a single tear traced a path down her cheek. Since Ethan was already dead, she couldn't let this child, a child that didn't belong to them, be born. Meanwhile, Ethan, who had just been terminated, woke up. The system, to compensate for the failed mission with Isabella, had given him a new one. He was now Aiden Cole, recently returned from abroad. His new objective was the girl next door, his childhood friend, Sophie Miller. As for the real reason for Ethan Shaw's death, or the looks on the faces of Isabella and the Shaw family when they found out the truth, he didn't care. Today was his first day at Miller Corp. Here, he would be reunited with an old friend. "Aiden, is that you?" Aiden turned to see a girl's delighted face. He blinked, taking a few seconds to place her. "Sophie, it's me. It's been so long." The girl rushed forward and wrapped him in a tight hug, her sweet voice tinged with a playful pout. "You came back and didn't even say anything. Let me look at you. You're thinner than before." Though Sophie was a year younger than Aiden, she was bubbly and effusive. She had always loved tagging along with him when they were kids and had even been upset for a while after he went abroad. "What made you decide to work at Miller Corp? Didn't your dad want you to start learning the ropes at your family's company?" Aiden smiled, gesturing to their respective heights. "You've gotten taller, Sophie. My dad did want me to, but I wanted to find a company that suited me and get some experience first. Miller Corp has been doing really well these past few years, so it seemed like a natural choice." Sophie's smile turned into a pout. "I thought maybe you came here for me. You didn't even answer my calls for all those years you were away. I thought you'd forgotten about me." Aiden, having inherited all of this identity's memories, knew the reason. He made up a quick excuse to cover for it. The system's notification of an increase in affinity level sounded in his mind, and he breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe this mission wouldn't be as hard as he thought. Aiden quickly settled into a routine, splitting his time between his family home and Miller Corp. The warmth and affection from his new family made him feel, for the first time, what a real home was like. Isabella had a restless night, her dreams filled with Ethan's laughter from years past. Before Leo returned, her relationship with her daughter hadn't been so bad. When Maya started getting close to Leo, she hadn't tried to stop it. She had even thought Ethan was incompetent. What kind of father was he if his own child didn't like him? But the truth was, Maya was just like her. She was embarrassed by her blind father, And while she did everything she could to distance herself from him, she had no problem accepting his care. What she had mistaken for good nature was just a byproduct of his love for them. And the consequences of him no longer loving them were more than they could bear. That night, Isabella came down with a high fever that wouldn't break. The family doctor and her assistant had to take her to the hospital. Everyone assumed it was from overwork, but she knew the truth. The suppressed grief and an indescribable, complex guilt had finally broken her. "Izzy, you're finally awake." The first thing Isabella heard when she opened her eyes was a familiar voice. She was about to call out his name, but when she saw the person's face clearly, she froze. She had forgotten. Her husband and Leo had very similar voices. The woman shook her head, but didn't respond with her usual warmth and concern. She needed to distance herself from Leo. Maybe Ethan was watching her. "Izzy, where's my brother? How is he, after donating his liver to me? I only found out after the surgery that it was him. I want to thank him properly." Leo's voice was pleasant, but Isabella was in no mood to deal with him. "Mommy, you said Daddy would come back. When? I miss him." Maya came running into the room, gripping the corner of the bedsheet. "Maya, slow down. Come here, sit with Uncle. Your mom needs to rest." Leo put on a kind smile, but today Maya was not in an obedient mood. "I don't want to. I want Daddy. Your cooking isn't as good as Daddy's. He has to come back right now, or I'll get mad and never talk to him again." "Maya, I'll figure something out about your father. But you remember this. He's definitely not dead." The man's smile froze. Ethan had been declared dead. Was Isabella losing her mind, or was she just lying to placate the child? "Izzy, my brother, he—" Their eyes met. Isabella's irritation was palpable. "Don't ask about him. Just take good care of his liver. He died because of you." The blunt words pierced Leo's facade. He immediately put on a tearful display. "I'm sorry, I didn't know. I only found out after the surgery that my brother gave me his liver. I'm so grateful to him." "Leo," Chloe stormed in. "Who did you just say gave you their liver? Ethan? That's impossible. How could someone so malicious do something so kind? Where is he? I'm going to go ask him myself." "Chloe, don't talk about Ethan like that." The first to rebuke her was Helen, her eyes red and swollen. She let out a heavy sigh, trying to suppress the pain in her heart. "He was the donor. He wasn't that malicious." Chloe frowned, glancing at the expressions of everyone in the room. She froze. It really was Ethan. Unconvinced, she pressed on. "Then where is he? Which room is he in?" A heavy silence filled the room. It was Maya who finally answered. "Auntie, Daddy is in the morgue." Chloe stared at Isabella in disbelief. Seeing the tacit confirmation in her eyes, she stumbled backward a few steps, then turned and ran towards the morgue. The air was frigid, but Chloe didn't hesitate. She pulled back the white sheet, and at the sight of the pale, bruised face, she collapsed to the floor. Isabella, still in her hospital gown, looked on impatiently. "Now that you've seen him, you can go. The Shaw family wasn't very good to him when he was alive. Now that you know he's dead, you must be thrilled." Chloe bit her lip, glaring up at the woman who stood over her. She spat on the floor. "You're the murderer. You're the one who sent him to the operating table. No matter what, he was my brother. The Shaw family should be the one to handle his body." A lump formed in Isabella's throat. She was a murderer, but so was the Shaw family. "I disagree. He was my husband. As for you Shaws, your biological son's liver saved your adopted son. You're more benevolent than saints, aren't you?" Helen, who had followed them, was already sobbing uncontrollably. Thinking of all the hardships Ethan had endured as a blind man, her heart ached. "Mom, I didn't know my brother died giving me his liver. I can give it back to him." Leo pleaded, grabbing his mother's arm, but Helen pulled her hand away without a word. Chloe just shook her head. "He's already dead. What good would giving it back do? It's not like it would bring him back to life. It's his liver." It was only then that Leo realized the attitudes of the Shaw family and Isabella towards him had completely changed. He couldn't even begin to imagine how they would react if they knew he was responsible for Ethan's death. But fate had other plans. Ben Carter suddenly threw open the doors to the morgue. Behind him stood police officers and a medical examiner. "Do you really believe he died of sudden cardiac arrest the day after surgery?" "I don't. That's why I called the police. Ethan was so unlucky to have a family and a wife like you. And you, Maya, was Ethan ever anything but good to you? You got food poisoning and you blamed him, even though he never made you mushroom soup in his life." The firm, powerful words stunned everyone in the room. A red-eyed Maya, as if remembering something, jumped up and pointed at Leo. "It was Uncle. He gave me the mushroom soup. He said if I told everyone Daddy made me drink it, he could be my new daddy and take care of me every day." The child's innocent voice pulled everyone from their grief. Helen rushed over and scooped up her granddaughter, turning to a stunned Leo. Her voice trembled. Is this true? Leo, you... No, Mom. How can you believe a child? Leo stammered, but everyone in the room was sharp enough to see through him. Maya might be young, but she was stubborn. I'm telling the truth. Uncle, I don't like you anymore. I just want my daddy. I want my daddy. Isabella's face darkened. She took the sobbing Maya from her mother-in-law and turned to Leo. She knew her daughter. The only reason she would recant now was because she missed Ethan. Izzy, you have to believe me. The man's eyes were red as he started to plead, but Ben cut him off. Is playing the victim fun? You did the same thing back at the Shaw house, playing the victim to hurt Ethan. If you really want to prove your innocence, then step aside and let the medical examiner find out how Ethan really died. Chloe and Helen were confused. Wasn't it sudden cardiac arrest after the surgery? Could have been. Foul play. Ben let out a sarcastic laugh. If they really only took 60% of his liver, the chances of death are low. Can any of you prove that Ethan was still alive after the surgery? The question stumped the Shaws and Isabella. Her knowledge of Ethan's condition had come from the doctor. Even his death had been announced by him. What if that doctor was part of it? She pinched the bridge of her nose and looked at the police, then nodded. Investigate it. Leo panicked. He had lied about the cause of death being post-op cardiac arrest precisely because he was afraid they would find out Ethan had died on the operating table. An autopsy would reveal everything he had done. No, that's disrespectful to the deceased. My brother is already dead. Can't you just let him rest in peace? The man, his eyes red, tried to block the way but was stopped by the police. A flash of pain crossed Helen and Chloe's faces. Leo's reaction was a clear sign of guilt. Their expressions tightened as they tried not to think about how the brother they had always doted on could have become this person. The last of Isabella's hopes shattered. Her voice was sharp, laced with fury. And the surgeon who performed the operation? Bring him here, too. A few minutes later, the lead surgeon and his assistant were brought to the morgue. The moment they saw the police, they collapsed to the floor. It was Mr. Leo Shaw who made us do it. He told us to remove 80% of the liver and then find an excuse for his death after the surgery. But Ethan Shaw was in poor health, and he died on the table. I was afraid of Ms. Vansis Anga, Zoe Elite. Please forgive me. It was Mr. Shaw who told me to say it was sudden cardiac arrest and pretend we try to resuscitate him. Robert Shaw, who had just gotten off work and rushed to the hospital to see his son, froze. He asked a nurse what was going on and learned the horrific truth. His biological son had donated his liver to Leo, only to be murdered by him on the operating table. The world went black, and he collapsed. Dad! Robert! The Shaw family was thrown into chaos. Isabella, having heard the truth, was overcome with a chilling rage. The outcome she had most feared had come to pass. Ethan had been killed by the person everyone thought was a saint. And even after his death, to avoid her suspicion, they had fabricated the manner and time of his passing. A sharp slap echoed through the room. Her face was a mask of fury. How dare you, Leo Shaw? Izzy, it wasn't me. He's framing me. It was Ethan. He set me up. At this point, Leo was a blubbering mess of tears and snot, a pathetic and laughable sight. Even now, he was still blaming a dead man. Isabella stumbled a few steps, then turned to the police. Please interrogate him thoroughly, and send a copy of his confession to my assistant. Thank you. Izzy, don't go. You're carrying our child. For the baby's sake, please help me. All eyes turned to the impeccably dressed Isabella. She shook her head decisively. I will only have one child. Maya, a young police officer, just starting to piece together the twisted tale of premeditated murder and betrayal, felt a pang of pity for the woman. But the truly tragic figure was the blind husband. He had given her his corneas, and this was how he had ended up. The autumn rain fell in a steady drizzle over the city. After scheduling her abortion, Isabella stared numbly as the man's body was taken away. A hollow emptiness filled her heart. You lied, Mommy. Daddy's not coming back. It's all your fault for making him donate his liver. Maya's cries were like daggers to Isabella's heart. She regretted it. She had been arrogant, taking his unwavering obedience for granted. But how could he be dead? He hadn't even left a final word. Didn't his system help him anymore? But no one could answer these questions for her. The truth was, he shouldn't have died. It was Leo's insistence on taking more of the liver that had killed him. She should have known. Before the surgery, his leg and hand had been broken. How could his body have been strong? The woman leaned against a pillar at a bus stop, covering her face as she sobbed. Maya, clinging to her side, was just as miserable. The rain seemed endless. Suddenly, Maya saw a familiar face on a passing bus. Daddy! Daddy! The girl ran into the rain, trying to chase after it, but she had forgotten. Two small legs could never outrun a bus. Aiden, on the bus, turned his head, his expression unchanged, as if nothing had happened. A murmur went through the bus. What's going on? There's a woman and a child chasing us. Are they looking for someone? The chatter caught the driver's attention. The bus hissed to a stop. A breathless Isabella finally felt a moment of relief. When she had first heard her daughter yell "Daddy," she had assumed it was a mistake. But seeing the conviction in Maya's eyes, a flicker of hope had ignited in her own dying heart. But when she saw the young man in the tracksuit, she froze. He looked about 5/10 like Ethan, but more than that, he looked exactly like Ethan had in his youth. Ethan, The drenched woman started to get on the bus, but stopped when she saw the disgust in his eyes. Ma'am, are you looking for someone? You can get on, but we have to get to the next stop. The driver and passengers offered kindly. Maya scrambled on first and grabbed Aiden's hand. Daddy, it's me, Maya. I miss you so much. I don't like Uncle anymore. A few nosy passengers chuckled. This kid looks like he's barely 20. How could he have a 7 or 8-year-old daughter? Isabella gripped the handrail, her knuckles white. The lurch of the bus was more jarring than she expected, and the feeling of being soaking wet was miserable. But seeing him, it was all worth it. Ethan, let's go home. I know I was wrong. I promise. The Shaws and Leo will never bully you again. But Aiden just frowned. Ma'am, I think you have the wrong person. I don't know you. The noisy bus fell silent. A few of the older women exchanged looks, understanding this was a case of mistaken identity. Isabella bit her lip, studying Aiden's face, but she couldn't find a single crack in his facade. No, you are my daddy. You even smell the same. The woman's eyes lit up, but his next words plunged her into an icy despair. I'm wearing cologne today, little girl. Is it so strange that I might have accidentally bought the same brand as your father? Seeing the unfriendly looks from the other passengers, Aiden smirked, picked up his bag, and got off the bus. Isabella immediately ran after him, but she couldn't catch up to the man who had already hailed a cab and sped away. Mommy, was that really not Daddy? But his hugs feel the same as Daddy's. And Daddy never wore cologne. It has to be him. Maya stomped her foot, blaming both herself and her mother for being useless. By the time they got into the assistant's car, even more shocking news awaited them. Ms. Vance, Leo Shaw has confessed. The incident with the piano was staged by him. And when it looked like your husband pushed him, it was a deliberate setup. Under hypnosis, Leo admitted he fell on purpose. With every word, the woman's face grew darker. Maya, her eyes red, tugged at the assistant's sleeve. So, Daddy was framed? And we still made him kneel, and we broke his leg. Daddy must have been so sad, right? Isabella's already guilt-ridden heart shattered completely. She couldn't even imagine how hopeless he must have felt. It wasn't just Leo who had killed him. They were all accomplices. The woman coughed violently, a bitter, tear-filled laugh escaping her lips. She wanted to find him, to make it up to him, to apologize. But who could she apologize to? His body was still at the police station. She had to bring him home. Isabella wiped her tears, a new, desperate hope blooming within her. Ethan had just died, and she had immediately met a boy who looked just like him. There had to be a connection. She would find it. When she saw the body, which had begun to emit a faint odor, Isabella, who was usually obsessed with cleanliness, felt no revulsion. She held the body as if it were a precious treasure, only to be shoved away by Ben Carter. Let him go. I'm having him cremated. What right do you, his incompetent wife, have to touch him? The force of the push sent Isabella stumbling backward, her hip hitting the corner of a table with a painful thud. She looked at the furious man, knowing he was Ethan's best friend. You rich people don't care if others live or die. That boy, Daniel Chun, he died of shock because the blood from the bank arrived too late. He didn't have to die, and neither did Ethan. Isabella, search your conscience and tell me, was he ever anything but good to you? And what did you do? You cheated on him while constantly putting him down and bullying him. He didn't listen to our warnings before because he loved you, but he doesn't love you anymore. Who are you putting on the show for? The man's harsh accusations were like knives, stripping away the last of Isabella's dignity. She remembered forcing Ethan to eat food he was allergic to, forcing him onto the operating table, even taking away the job he loved and the song he had poured his heart into. Why did someone like her have to repent? Her love was shallow and ignorant, not even love at all. The countless times she had sided against him and blamed him had pushed him further and further away. The tragedy was that she had realized it all too late. In the end, she watched as the sleeping Ethan was taken away, unable to make sound. It wasn't until she was at the hospital that she discovered she had intermittent aphonia, brought on by extreme grief. Maya sat by her bed, her face full of resentment. But where was she supposed to find her father now? When the Shaws heard that Ben had taken the body, they all came looking for her. In just a few days, Robert and Helen had aged considerably. Even Chloe had dark circles under her eyes. Ethan was our son. How could you give his body to someone else? Faced with their accusations, Isabella let out a cold laugh and showed them the words she had typed on her phone. We all had a hand in his death. You didn't know, did you? The incidents with the piano and the pushing were all Leo's doing. You really mistook a fish eye for a pearl. Helen's eyes widened. She clutched her heart, muttering, no, it can't be. But the clear evidence forced all three Shaws to realize that all their past accusations and humiliations had been wrong. He had never done those things, yet his own family had hurt him without a second thought. At that moment, as if remembering something, Robert suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. Then, all those times we thought Ethan was bullying Leo, could that have been fake too? What else is Leo capable of? The question made Helen and Chloe freeze. They thought back to all the times they had punished Ethan for his supposed misbehavior, and their hearts clenched with a suffocating tightness. Chloe sighed, determined to find out the truth. After she recovered, Isabella was in a constant daze. The abortion had left her anemic, and in just a few days, her mental state had deteriorated rapidly. Her parents, hearing about the situation from abroad, were furious. Isabella, have you lost your mind? Using your husband's liver to save someone else, and letting your child call another man dad? How could I have a daughter like you? It's one thing if you die, but what about Maya? She'll have no father and no mother. What will people think? The drunk woman suddenly stood up and looked at the child curled up on the sofa. Uncared for, her clothes were on backward. She wasn't going to school, just clutching a photo of herself and Ethan, crying. But what was the use? He wasn't coming back. Not long ago, she had learned that Ethan's ashes had been scattered at sea. Even his gravestone had been hidden by Ben. The world was a vast place, but it seemed she would never again find the 18-year-old boy who had shyly asked her if she wanted to see again. Isabella spent her days and nights drinking. She tried to find the boy from the bus, but it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Then, a few days later, at a business dinner, she stepped outside for some air and came face to face with the person she had been desperately searching for. Aiden frowned. His mouth moved faster than his brain. Isabella. The woman froze, joy flooding her senses. Did this prove he knew her? That he was Ethan? Ethan, it is you. You even said my name. Come back with me. Aiden cursed himself internally and shook off her hand. You have the wrong person. I just got back to the country. How could I be your husband? Besides, I'm Aiden Cole of the Cole family. We move in the same circles. Is it so strange that I would know your name? His words left her speechless. She was about to say more when Sophie Miller interrupted. You're Isabella Vance? What are you doing? This is my boyfriend. Don't even think about trying to steal him. Aiden raised an eyebrow at Sophie, who blinked rapidly, a faint blush coloring her earlobes. Isabella's face was tense, her lips pressed into a thin line as she continued to stare at Aiden. Sophie, let's go. She's mistaken me for her dead husband. How strange. Aiden didn't even spare Isabella another glance, grabbing his girlfriend's arm and walking away. Isabella wanted to follow, but she stopped. Aiden's posture, his every movement, was just like Ethan's. The most important thing now was to get him to admit his identity and forgive her. Feeling the piercing gaze on his back, Aiden tried to calm himself. Thanks, Sophie. See you tomorrow. Sophie looked at the seemingly carefree boy beside her and felt a pang of irritation. From now on, if you see Isabella Vance, you walk the other way. Her husband died, and she's gone crazy. Also, she added, you've been back for a while, I forgot to ask. Did you date anyone while you were abroad? As soon as the words were out, Sophie started nervously picking at her fingers, the blush on her ears making her face look even softer in the streetlight. No, why? Sophie quickly looked up, her eyes sparkling in a way that Aiden found strange. The next second, a soft, sweet touch landed on his forehead. Then, will you be my boyfriend? I like you. Fireworks exploded in Aiden's mind. In the 10 days since the mission had begun, he hadn't even had a try. Sophie had been the one to close the distance between them. Her sincerity and affection were clear to him. After a moment, he gently tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. Okay, I will. They walked away, laughing and talking, completely unaware of the car parked nearby or of Isabella Vance inside. Though her nails were digging into her palms, drawing blood, Isabella's expression remained unchanged. She had seen it clearly. The way Aiden walked, the expressions on his face when he spoke, even the angle at which he tilted his body when he took someone's arm. It was all Ethan. Isabella looked at the photo she had just taken, cropped Sophie out of it, and felt a little better. She drove back to the Vance estate. Tomorrow, she would take her daughter and demand answers. When she arrived home, the lights were on, but the house felt chillingly empty. "Mommy, where's Daddy?" Almost every time Isabella came home, Maya would ask the same hopeful question. Usually, the woman would just shake her head, her face grim. But today, Isabella was in a remarkably good mood. "I found him. I'll take you to see him tomorrow." A bright spark of joy lit up the girl's eyes, but then, as if remembering something, they dimmed again. "You're not just tricking me, are you? Everyone says Daddy isn't coming back." Isabella looked at her daughter's eyes, so similar to Ethan's, and shook her head. "No, trust me. I will bring Daddy back to us." Aiden, who was already asleep, knew nothing of this. To be honest, he found Isabella's current behavior bizarre. It couldn't be that she suddenly missed Ethan now that he was dead. What about all the suffering he had endured before? Besides, he was not a forgiving person. He would never go back to someone who had betrayed him. Aiden was woken by the doorbell. He looked through the peephole and saw the familiar faces. He clenched his fist and quickly tried to block the half-open door. "Ms. Vance, what are you doing here so early? I already told you, I don't know your husband. And, as far as I know, he was blind. I'm not. Other than a passing resemblance, what is so similar about us?" Outside the door, Isabella refused to let go, letting her hands get pinched and reddened by the door. "Daddy, it's because I missed you. Don't be mad at Mommy." Maya, being small, squeezed through the opening. This was the man she had seen on the bus, the one who looked so much like her daddy. Even the way he got angry was the same. Aiden wanted to laugh. Suddenly, the whole thing felt pointless. "Fine. Since you're both here, what do you want?" The man poured himself a glass of water, ignoring the stunned mother and daughter behind him. Isabella ignored the pain in her hands, her voice full of pleading. "I'm so sorry for what I did to my husband. I didn't know he would die on the operating table. It was that monster, Leo, who killed him. I've already sent him to prison. I just want to make it up to him. He used to love me and our child so much, and I was the one who pushed him away. I read his Braille journal. I know he got his sight back. It was my fault. It wasn't until he was gone that I realized I can't live without him." "Look," she said, touching her eye, "these are the eyes he gave me. I really know I was wrong. Ethan, please forgive me." Isabella's eyes were red and swollen. Her bruised hands clung to Aiden's pant leg, her voice choked with sobs. Aiden's heart stirred, but he quickly suppressed it. What was this? Belated affection was worth less than weeds. Besides, the real Ethan Shaw was already dead. "But I'm not your husband. I heard he didn't have a good life with the Shaws or the Vances. You didn't care when you were bullying a blind man, but now that he's dead, you regret it. What's the use?" By the end, tears were welling in Aiden's eyes. In that moment, he, as Ethan, was finally venting the anger he had held inside for so long. "Daddy, Mommy was wrong. But even if you don't forgive her, please don't leave me. I miss you so much." Maya seized the opportunity and threw her arms around Aiden. For a moment, he couldn't break free. Aiden took a deep breath and looked at the child, a perfect blend of his and Isabella's features. "I'm not your father. I heard you really liked Leo. You were so disgusted by your blind father. What is this now?" The girl blinked back tears, looking up at Aiden. "Daddy, I know I was wrong. I'll be your good little girl from now on. Please don't leave. Leo is a bad man. I was just tricked by him." Aiden looked away, using a bit more force to push the child away. That look in her eyes, so much like Isabella's, made his heart skip a beat. "What does that have to do with me? I have a girlfriend. We're going to get married and have our own good, obedient child." With every word, the expressions on the mother and daughter's faces grew more somber. "The man you're begging to come back is the blind man. But he's already dead. You should be asking him for forgiveness, repenting to him." The woman's face went deathly pale. She and her daughter had seen Ethan's body with their own eyes. But her gut told her that wasn't the whole story. She wasn't ready to give up. "Then give me a chance to pursue you." Aiden, why did you let them in?" Sophie had planned to start her first day of girlfriend duties, only to be intercepted by this mother-daughter duo. She knew the look in Isabella's eyes, but she wasn't afraid. Trying to steal someone's boyfriend right in front of his girlfriend? You have some nerve, Ms. Vance. Your husband just died. What are you doing with my boyfriend? There are plenty of people in the world who look alike. You're even using a child. You'll really stop at nothing." The sharp, direct words left Isabella breathless. She glanced nervously at Aiden, but he ignored her completely. She knew her behavior was far from normal, but as someone who had lived with Ethan for 10 years, she knew his habits, and she trusted her instincts. But Aiden didn't give her a chance to collect herself. The building's security guards had arrived. Isabella's face fell. "Still not leaving? Do you want to be thrown out and humiliated, Ms. Vance?" His voice was ice cold, nothing like the gentle, obedient Ethan of the past. But to Isabella, It seemed perfectly normal. Perhaps the Ethan she had known before was just a suppressed, fabricated version of himself. As the reluctant Maya was dragged away by her mother, the morning's drama finally came to an end. Sophie immediately rushed to Aiden, fussing over him to make sure he was okay. Don't open the door for people like that anymore. You don't know how crazy she's been since her husband died. She's always mistaking people for him on the street. And she's been going after the Shaw family, who were also horrible to her husband. I heard the adopted son framed the real heir. It's such a tragedy. Aiden listened to her sighs of sympathy and felt a sense of relief. When the time was right, he would tell her the truth. Maybe in a few years, Isabella would forget about him, and he could finally be free of her relentless pursuit. For the next month, Aiden and Sophie's relationship progressed rapidly. Between that and his busy work schedule, he didn't see Isabella at all. The truth was, the Shaws and Isabella were at odds over Leo's sentence and Maya's custody. Helen Shaw, propped up by a maid, lamented, "Leo is just a bad seed. It's my fault for being a bad mother and always punishing Ethan. That child must have hated me so much. He absolutely cannot get a light sentence. Even if we have to use the Shaw family's connections, we have to make sure he rots in prison." Chloe, on the sofa, seemed to think her mother was being too harsh, but she caught her father's warning glance and held her tongue. Isabella shook her head, her expression unreadable. "Prison is too good for him. I want the best lawyers to make sure he pays with his life." Helen nodded in agreement, but Chloe couldn't stay silent any longer. "Dad, Mom, Leo is my brother too. He said he just made a mistake. A few years in prison should be enough punishment." "Shut up, you wretched girl. The one who died was your real brother. Why should he get to live? Ethan's liver was gone when he died. Do you know how much pain he was in? And no one was there with him." The vast living room fell silent. Isabella's cold gaze fell on Chloe, a flicker of anger in her eyes. "Sentencing should be in a month or two. When I say the death penalty, I mean it. Isabella." The woman didn't answer, just looked at Chloe with disdain. She wondered if Ethan knew that his own sister was still defending Leo after his death. Would he be sad? Probably not. He was never one to pin his hopes on others. "Izzy, Ethan is gone. Let us have custody of Maya. I'll raise her well and make sure no one else bullies her." This someone else was clearly referring to any future man in Isabella's life. But the woman just extinguished her cigarette. "That won't happen. I'm not getting married again, and Maya will be the sole heir to the Vance family." But Robert and Helen were still not convinced. "Do you think your parents will agree to that? Izzy, if you still care about Ethan, give us the child." "He would have wanted that." "No, she's the only connection I have left to Ethan. If he comes back and doesn't see her, he'll be angry." Robert and Helen exchanged a look of disbelief. "Izzy, you know him better than we do. We failed him as parents. He probably won't forgive you either. Besides, he's already passed away." Helen produced a clear photo of the cremation certificate, but the woman just laughed and tore it to shreds. After the Shaws left, she looked at the collection of photos of Aiden she had gathered over the past month, a rare gentleness in her expression. Though he was discreet, Isabella had still found out that he had secretly visited the grave of the boy named Daniel Chun. He just wasn't willing to admit it yet. Isabella was a patient person, but seeing Sophie so close to Aiden, she couldn't suppress her anger. Suddenly, an idea came to her, and a smile spread across her face. Soon, she was walking unimpeded into the city's men's prison. Leo had been locked up for over a month, his initial frenzy having settled into a numb despair. When he saw who had come to visit, a twisted grin spread across his face. "Isabella Vance, why are you here? To laugh at me? Too bad Ethan's dead. It's too late for you to be angry and regretful now. You're all idiots. I just had to act a little weak and pathetic, and you all believe me. And Ethan, he's the real tragedy. A nanny for 10 years, and he's finally free. He should be thanking me." "Enough." The woman looked impatiently at the guard. Soon, Leo was restrained, and a chilling voice filled the room. "To appease the Shaw family, I broke his leg. Later, I caused him to break his hand. Now, before you're sentenced, I should return the favor for everything you did to Ethan." A heavy thud echoed through the room, followed by a man's piercing scream, but no one came in. Leo felt a searing pain, as if his bones were being gnawed on. The intermittent throbbing was unbearable. His right hand, which had been broken before, was now useless. "Isabella, are you crazy? We were childhood sweethearts. You sent me to prison for that dead blind man. Why?" The man's hysterical screams didn't faze Isabella in the slightest. She glanced at him coolly and threw a stack of photos on the floor. They were of Leo in his younger days, with a wealthy foreign woman. "I was nice to you because you weren't a threat to my husband's position. But you shouldn't have killed him. Also, you should know, I hate being deceived. You played me for a fool. Why did you think you could get away with it so easily? Those few words sealed Leo's fate. At dawn, the woman wiped the blood from her hands, a strange sense of loneliness creeping in. She used to wake up early every morning, especially after a night of passion. She loved watching the sleeping Ethan. He was actually quite handsome. Even after he went blind, he just looked pitiable. Her feelings for Ethan were complex, mixed with a strong sense of possession. The funny thing was, she had never acknowledged her own feelings. But now, to make amends, Isabella took action. Every day, a large bouquet of sunflowers, his favorite flower, appeared on Aiden's desk at Miller Corp. They were free and full of life. All sorts of gifts, watches, gourmet food, were delivered to his desk, much to the amazement of his colleagues. But when Aiden saw the familiar handwriting on one of the cards, he froze, then tore it to shreds. He threw out everything Isabella sent. It wasn't until Sophie noticed something was wrong that she used her influence to stop the gifts from reaching the office. Isabella is crazy. Aiden, don't pay any attention to her, she said, comforting her boyfriend while dialing Isabella's number. Isabella Vance, are you insane? Aiden is my boyfriend. What do you think you're doing? The woman took a sip of her red wine and smiled. Nothing. He knows all about our past. The words sent a shockwave through Sophie. The phone was on speaker, so Aiden heard everything. But Sophie didn't say anything. After a long moment, she just held him tighter. Aiden, whatever you say, I'll believe you. I think we should get engaged as soon as Vance. Are you insane? Aiden is my boyfriend. What do you think you're doing? The woman took a sip of her red wine and smiled. Nothing. He knows all about our past. The words sent a shockwave through Sophie. The phone was on speaker, so Aiden heard everything. But Sophie didn't say anything. After a long moment, she just held him tighter. Aiden, whatever you say, I'll believe you. I think we should get engaged as soon as possible. I'm starting to get scared of that crazy woman. Aiden smiled and nodded. He hadn't expected his mission target, whom he hadn't known for very long, to trust him so unconditionally. It was time to put an end to this. The next day, he walked straight into the Vance Corp tower. The last time he had been here was as Isabella's husband, bringing her lunch, only to be nearly thrown out by security. Aiden couldn't help but smile. Looking back now, all the things he had done for Isabella's affinity level seemed so foolish. Isabella Vance? I'm here to see her. Just tell her Aiden Cole is here. The receptionist was surprised. She had become accustomed to seeing men who bore a resemblance to the former Mr. Vance trying to get an audience with the CEO. This one was the most convincing yet. She impatiently made the call, but was stunned when she was told to bring him up to the CEO's office, unharmed. Aiden ignored the stares from the people around him. He was trying to figure out how Isabella had discovered his identity. You're here. I want to know, what makes you so sure I'm Ethan Shaw? And how dare you say that in front of my girlfriend? Isabella waved her hand dismissively and handed him a few photos. They were of a bruised and beaten Leo in prison and a candid shot of Aiden at a cemetery. I'm sorry, Ethan. I was arrogant. I thought you would never leave. But after you were gone, I realized how much I couldn't bear to lose you. I was afraid you would leave once you reached full affinity, so I didn't dare risk it. I was wrong about Leo. I know it's too late to say anything, but we still have Maya, and I promise, no one will ever bully you again. If you just forgive me, I'll do anything. By the end, the woman was sobbing. Aiden met her bloodshot eyes, then quickly looked away. You said it yourself. I forgive you, but I want you to stay out of my life. To be honest, my current family loves me very much. I want to start a new life. As for you and Maya, you're not in my future. He said the words that would cut her the deepest in the calmest tone possible. But as the one who had caused all this, what right did she have to object? If you truly feel guilty about what you did to Ethan Shaw, then promise me you'll take good care of Maya. In 10 years, I never asked you for anything. And even when I did, you never agreed. So please, promise me this now. Aiden wiped a tear from the corner of his eye and took a step back, putting distance between them. After a long silence, Isabella's breath hitched. She summoned all her strength and said, What if I died? Would you care then? If you kill yourself, the forgiveness is void. All I'm asking for is simple. Just let yourself go, and let me go. When Isabella came to her senses, Aiden was gone. She repeated the words, let go, over and over, but she didn't have the courage to chase after him. His forgiveness was the best she could have hoped for, but a broken mirror can't be put back together. She had actually fantasized that he would forgive and forget. Perhaps this was heaven's punishment, to not cherish what you have and to regret it when it's gone. That evening, she saw the news of the engagement between the heir of the Cole family and the daughter of the Miller family on her phone. Her eyes reddened. Once, He had thrown himself into the fire for her, and now he had found a better place. The woman lay on Ethan's bed, tossing and turning. The room was filled with his scent, which only served to grate on her nerves. Isabella couldn't bear to think of all the times Ethan must have lain in this bed, crying after being wronged. And what pain must he have felt, seeing her cheat on him? Maya's sudden tantrum broke through Isabella's grief. She was much thinner now. The moment she saw her mother, she ran over. "Daddy is getting married to someone else. You have to do something. If it weren't for you, he wouldn't have left." Isabella held the child tighter. "He asked us to stay away. I've already made too many mistakes. I can't go back on my promise." The pale explanation did not satisfy the child, but she couldn't think of a better solution. The woman who had once been a force to be reckoned with in the business world, due to her arrogance and foolishness, had fallen into a deep abyss. With the influence of the Vance and Shaw families, Leo's case was quickly tried and sentenced. Just as Isabella had wanted, he was given the death penalty, to be carried out in 1 month. Isabella also came forward and admitted her role in the plagiarism scandal. The people who had once vilified Ethan online, upon learning his story, turned their fury on the Shaw and Vance families. The Shaw family's company was already small, and when a competitor leaked a video of Robert and Helen's past treatment of their biological son, the public outcry was immense. Everyone felt for Ethan, and the Shaw family's stock plummeted. Chloe frantically tried to find help, but everyone just wanted a piece of the failing company. Robert had a stroke and was left in a vegetative state. Helen knew nothing about business. The once great Shaw family was now an empty shell. In the end, with no other options, Chloe held a press conference, apologized to her dead brother, and declared bankruptcy. The Vance family, with its deep roots, did not collapse, but the family patriarch disowned Isabella and removed her from her position. She was no longer the powerful CEO. Her parents, from abroad, tearfully tried to persuade their daughter to leave the country with them, but Isabella refused. She looked at her uncomprehending parents and wanted to tell them the reason she was staying, but she realized it was too unbelievable. She knew Ethan's, or rather, Aiden's, secret and no one else did. Didn't that mean that no one understood him better than her? Maya, too, refused to leave. Even though her daddy didn't want her, her mommy would take her to see him in secret every week. She thought it was enough that her daddy, no longer blind, was living a good life. Isabella's mother gave up. "Fine, I'm not going to bother with you anymore. I know you've been secretly following that Cole boy. Is it because he looks like Ethan?" The mother and daughter both shook their heads. Maya had been taught by her mother not to reveal her father's secret. For them, at least in this country, they could still see the person they longed for. After losing her job, Isabella felt a sense of freedom. The incessant drinking after Ethan's death had taken a toll on her health, but she still kept the room she had shared with Ethan immaculately clean and carefully stored all his clothes and belongings, as if by doing so, she could prove that her husband still existed. During this time, undisturbed by Isabella, Aiden's career flourished. He was promoted to project manager at Miller Corp. Even Sophie couldn't help but tease him. "Aiden, are you that dedicated to your work? You don't have time to look at your dear fiancé." Sophie in love was extra clingy and prone to jealousy, something Aiden had not expected. "Yeah, just a minute, Sophie. I'm almost done with this." Aiden's fingers flew across the keyboard, completely missing the sad look in Sophie's eyes. Her smile faded, and she gently wrapped her arms around his shoulders. "Aiden, let's get married. Soon." The man froze, turning his head, only to be caught in a passionate kiss. "I always feel like I can't quite hold on to you. If we get married and I tie you down, then I'll feel safe." Aiden looked at the 96% affinity notification from the system and nodded. He had never been the one to actively pursue his mission targets. If someone showed him a bit of kindness, he would repay it tenfold. That was why he had thrown himself at Isabella without a second thought. His childhood had made him that way. But now, he had someone who would unconditionally and actively run towards him. The news of their wedding, just a week away, spread quickly through the city, surprising even the upper echelons of society. Someone asked David Miller, "Didn't your daughter just get engaged? This is the first time I've seen someone rush in a marriage like this." David Miller laughed it off. "My daughter's afraid her husband will run away, so she wants to lock him down as soon as possible. Maybe I'll get to be a grandfather soon." The party was a swirl of clinking glasses and conversation, but Isabella, drinking alone in a corner, was a world apart. Since her departure, Vance Corp had declined, but no one dared to underestimate her. Her father's business empire in Europe was thriving, and no one wanted to cross her. But the stories of how she had treated her husband had sullied her reputation. When she heard that Aiden was getting married, she fell back into the same depressive state she had been in right after Ethan's death. She drank cup after cup of strong liquor, the burning in her stomach a welcome distraction. Late-night drinking binges that ended in the hospital became a regular occurrence. Whenever she was drunk, she would see the sunny, smiling Ethan in her dreams. So she would often sleep for days at a time. Even Maya noticed something was wrong. After much pleading and cajoling, she finally convinced her mother to go to the hospital for a checkup. Isabella looked at the diagnosis of an abnormal mental state, crumpled it up, and threw it in the trash. She didn't care and didn't want to take medication. Subconsciously, she didn't believe she was sick. Just then, she saw Aiden coming from the physical examination floor. He seemed to put on a little weight. The joy in his eyes vanished the moment he saw her. The woman saw the change in his expression and clenched her fists, her body stiff as she moved to avoid him. In the moment they passed each other, Isabella couldn't help but speak. "Ethan, congratulations on your wedding in advance." Aiden paused, then gave a faint, polite smile and a nod. It felt as if there was an insurmountable chasm between them. It wasn't until his figure disappeared that Isabella started to walk again, her steps heavy. She hated the smell of disinfectant in hospitals, but today, seeing the person she longed for, she felt a little grateful. Suddenly, her phone rang. Seeing the caller ID, the prison, she frowned. "Ms. Vance, Leo Shaw has escaped. He got out during the night. Please be careful." Isabella looked around warily. If the prison was telling her this, it meant they were looking for him. Leo hated her the most. Aiden should be safe. But a few minutes later, a call came from an unknown number. "Isabella Vance. I heard you used to be quite fond of that stand-in from the Cole family. I saw a photo. He does look like him, but strange. I have a feeling he really is my brother. I know you're the ones who got me the death penalty. So before they catch me and execute me, I'm taking someone with me." A photo was sent to her phone. It was a picture of Aiden standing at a crosswalk, waiting for the light, taken from inside a car. Isabella saw the crosswalk timer ticking down from 30 seconds and her heart lurched. She bolted out of the hospital. At the nearest intersection, she saw him, just as in the photo. There were only 5 seconds left. She couldn't hesitate. "Ethan, don't cross." Inside the car, Leo smiled when he saw Isabella running towards them. In an instant, the black car at the front of the line of traffic surged forward, heading straight for Aiden at the crosswalk. When he heard Isabella's voice, he instinctively turned his head. The next second, the screech of tires brought him back to reality. He had been pushed out of the way. A few feet away, lying in a pool of her own blood, was Isabella. It was then that he saw the face in the car window. It was Leo. Leo wasn't surprised that Isabella had pushed Aiden out of the way. His intention had been to hit one of them. Either way, he would have been happy. As the sounds of police sirens and an ambulance filled the air, the blood-soaked woman was lifted onto a stretcher. Leo was caught and, for escaping an attempted murder, was immediately sentenced to be executed by firing squad. The gunshot from the city prison did not wake Isabella. She, like Robert Shaw, had fallen into a vegetative state. Mommy, please wake up." Maya sobbed, seeing the complicated expression on her father's face as he stood nearby. He left before Isabella's parents arrived. Even though Isabella had saved his life without a second thought, he would not give up Sophie out of gratitude. "Sophie, make sure she gets the best medicine at the hospital." The woman, who already knew Aiden's past, nodded. They held their wedding as planned, and Aiden completed his mission. Isabella woke up a year later. To the despair of her parents, her legs were paralyzed, and she had become silent and withdrawn. When she learned that Aiden had long since married, the woman just nodded calmly, then spent the entire night crying in her hospital room. After sending a belated wedding gift, Isabella left the city in a wheelchair. She never saw Aiden again, and for the rest of her life, Isabella Vance prayed for the peace and happiness of the man who had been given a new life. And so, a life given in sacrifice was reborn in peace, while a love discovered too late became a lifetime of atonement, whispered only to the empty, echoing sea.